You're with Ask the Mayor on KWBE. Beatrice Mayor Bob Morgan in with us today. Good morning, Bob.
Good morning, Doug, or Dave. Doug. See,
I almost said Stan one time.
I started off so good last week. I wanted to make sure I didn't start off so good this week.
That's all right.
Sorry, Doug.
Speaking of starting off good and bad, normally, of course, we're about a little bit more than a week out from Christmas, and by this time we're usually seeing some snow. But boy, you got to feel for those people in Northern Plains and some of those cities where you want to talk about a snow removal job. Wow.
Yeah. I thought about that, for my previous job. When I heard the wind blow last night, I thought, I don't have to get up at 4:30 and drive. This will be great, And I looked out this morning. There's just a little skiff on the driveway, and I'm thinking, well, everybody out at SEC don't have to move snow, and we don't have to worry about getting our driveways blocked with snow.
Yeah. I don't know how much equipment a city has when you're talking 20, 25 inches of snow in some areas. That's got to be a tough thing for them. We'll get it sooner or later, but I imagine everybody's ready to go when it comes.
We're ready. We've got the trucks ready. If the wind blows, that's a whole different scenario with probably an augers to try to get everything done.
Yeah.
So.
Mm-hmm. It's always that thing of having to ridge snow in the downtown, then remove it later on. And
that's right.
It's kind of tough to do, but it'll come sooner or later. But a little bit about one of the things you do is appointments of people. Any appointments made so far in this early part of your?
There will be Monday night. We are going to, with Dave Escrow resigning. It leaves the chairmanship of the BPW empty. Mm-hmm. Bob Moran has done a wonderful job and served on the BPW for a number of years. Mm-hmm. And in visiting with him, he would like to take on that chairmanship responsibility, so he'll be appointed to the chair of the Board of Public Works. And I think that's a good move.
Yeah.
Terry Doyle has a strong interest in Engage. So with Rick Claybaugh going off, and Rick did a great job with Engage, we're going to, you'll see an appointment with Terry Doyle to the Engage Board as our city representative.
Mm-hmm. The city and county representatives, those are non-voting on that board, aren't they? Or are they? I can't remember if they are not.
Trying to think.
Not that it's, it might be a non-voting position, but I'm not sure. Maybe not. Maybe it is.
I'll double check. I know that the mayor is ex official.
That's right. Maybe that's what I'm thinking.
And I believe the other two have votes. Mm-hmm. In the past, Mayor Worth would go as an ex official member. Mm-hmm. Eric Tiemann wears two hats there. Mm-hmm. He's on the board, and he's also the chair of the Gage County Commissioners. So I believe he has a voting right, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, all right. One of the things that we were talking about earlier during the election, you had the election for the Airport Authority Board, which was still an entity, but that's going away now and becomes an advisory board. What about appointments on that?
We are going to move forward, and I think it's very important to have that advisory board. And 4 of the 5 members, including the 2 new members that were voted in, have accepted their appointments to that board, and we will go ahead and have a resolution to have them also ready to go for basically January 1st. And Gene Searcy, who's been on it for a long time, he decided not to be appointed to the board, so we will be looking for one additional person.
I see. Okay. Be interesting to see how that works out in terms of, it's a little bit like the library board now that you have, isn't it? It's kind of that same arrangement, I think, as an advisory board.
It is, and the library board has worked really, really well. Mm-hmm. And I think, one of the things that we need to do is we need to make sure we listen to our advisory boards. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure how often they meet. That's something they're going to have to decide. They did meet monthly. Whether they want to be monthly or quarterly will probably up to Dennis Schmidt, who, took over for Diane. But I think, when you think about the airport, it's a very, very important asset to the city of Beatrice, not only for the pilots that have their planes here, but also for all the commercial companies that are here. So they're busy.
Yeah. You see a lot of business aircraft come in periodically at that airport, and I'd imagine delivery-wise it gets maybe really busy too this time of year, but you see like what, FedEx or UPS or companies like that too.
Right. I think UPS, I could be wrong, but I think they have 2 flights that come in, one early in the morning and one later at night.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You mentioned Bob Moran wanting to be chair of the Board of Public Works. He actually was chairing his first meeting yesterday, and you attended that too. I know you, like Mayor Worth before, you wanted to get to a lot of these meetings to kind of find out the background of things. And Board of Public Works handles a pretty big enterprise in the city.
You know, they do. And, you know, some people have said, well, why do you have the Board of Public Works? But they are a group of great advisors that work with all the department heads and make recommendations to the city council. And I think they play a really vital role in what I would say, like you said, is a pretty major enterprise. So, you know, it's probably not uncommon that you see in corporations or banks where they have a board that kind of oversees, that has oversight responsibilities, but not, you know, day-to-day operational responsibilities. And I think the present members on the Board of Public Works have done a great job. You know, they went through that transition of moving away from NPPD to our own electric company, and for us that use electricity, that was a good move as far as cost savings to the city of Beatrice. So, you know, they take their job very seriously. I was surprised at the questions and the comments and the discussion that took place, but it was all very valid. It was all very good. And at the end of the day, you can really see what asset we have with, you know, people that are willing to give up 2 times a month with no salary.
And there are some years of experience on that board, like you said. There's been some members that have been on there for a while, so they're familiar with all the issues that the advisory body deals with.
Right, and like most boards, you know, terms come up and they rotate, you know, so you only lose about 1 member a year.
Yeah.
And so you really try to build not only some new blood in there, but you also try to build that sustainability as you move forward.
I think at your first meeting officially after you took office, you made the mention that, hey, you're looking for people who are interested in serving on a board or commission, contact the city. Had you gotten any early people saying, hey, I'd like to serve on some commission when a vacancy comes up?
We have. We've had a couple people who have either called me or put their name in, and as vacancies come up, we'll certainly take a look at those names.
Well, yesterday's Board of Public Works meeting, not a lot on the agenda, but there were a couple of consulting contracts. One was for recommendation on an hourly billed contract for the wastewater plant, and the other one was on, I think, the evaluation for lift stations, if I remember right.
Yep.
People might think, you know, there's a lot of consulting contracts that come before the council and the mayor, and they might think, oh, why do you farm all that out, or why do you pay all these consultants that? But I guess if you had to do all that work in-house, would things get kind of jammed up, do you think, in terms of maybe interfering with regular jobs that these department heads and their staff have?
Yeah, I mean, it gets to the point where you can't be, especially in this day and age, you can't be an expert at everything you do. And our department heads are wonderful, and we do stretch them thin enough. But if you look at the first one that the board is going to recommend is the consulting contract to the wastewater plant, that one is billed hourly and not to exceed for an on-call service. And that does 2 things for us. As we start reworking our wastewater plant, that's a major project that we want to make sure that from a cost accounting standpoint, we put all the costs toward that project. There's little things that come up that aren't part of that project, and we don't want to take that money and put it in that project and have it show that it's either overspent or we missed the mark somewhere, because we want to track those smaller items on their own to see what those are. And so that was a contract with Olson. I think it was a contract for $5,000 on an hourly basis, not to exceed, and that protects, you know, the city from going above that. And as far as the 5,000 go, if we don't use them at all, they don't get any of that. So I think it's a really good move for our wastewater plant.
And I think the other one on lift stations was up to 55,000, somewhere around
55
there.
or 57,000. You know, our lift stations are getting old.
Yeah.
And all of us want to make sure that, you know, the facilities work when we need them to work.
Yeah. You know, they were referred to as number. I think the 2 you did prior were 1 and 5, which I think are Northwest Beatrice and by the river, if I remember right.
I believe so.
4 and 6. I know one of them's along Carlisle Street, but I couldn't figure out where the other one was.
Yeah, I quite honestly, I'm going to have to look because I don't know.
But they're important because they're the equipment that pumps the sewage to the plant where it's
right.
Goes through the treatment process.
Yep.
So you have to do those things. So
yes, you do.
Yeah. One of the points was made that do you pick firms you're familiar with, or do you kind of look elsewhere now and then? In this case, and by law, I don't think you have to bid a professional services contract.
That is correct.
So you can, if you have a good experience with somebody, you can pick them again. Is there some advantage to doing that, do you think? Or?
Well, in this case, you really don't have a lot of people in that field that are local. Olson Associates out of Lincoln is as local as we can get, and they're the ones that have kind of helped design everything with our wastewater plant. So they're familiar with it, and they're also familiar with all the wastewater plants and what you do through the lift stations. And for them, they bring an expertise that we would have tough to find. They understand our system. You bring somebody else in, probably going to cost us more money because they're going to have to backtrack and kind of study the whole system again. Yeah. So, it amazed me whether I was at the college or I was at the city now. There's just a lot of consulting and there's a lot of plans and studies that have to be done before you can do the real stuff. And it just amazes me how much we have to do, but a lot of that we don't have a choice.
Yeah. Okay. Bob Morgan, Mayor of Beatrice, with us on Ask the Mayor today. We'll have more in a moment. Back on Ask the Mayor today with Beatrice Mayor Bob Morgan from the Board of Public Works meeting yesterday. Interesting discussion on the inventory that's being taken of lead and copper lines that may exist in the community. Obviously, a federal mandate situation where I know cities kind of don't like these things because you treat everybody the same for the worst case scenario that happened. Everybody's familiar with the Flint, Michigan crisis.
Right.
That's kind of what this originated from. But the progress report on it seems pretty good in terms of at least letting people know that it's out there.
It is, and I think we were one of the first municipalities that really jumped on this because we have until, the end of 2024 to make sure that every house in Beatrice has been checked for pipe that comes in on the lead and copper. We sent out, I think, a mailer or two. I know we've got an online way that you can register your home of what comes into the home. But I also know there's some questions and comments about, well, how do I know? What type of pipe do I have coming into my service entrance? And I would just refer people, if they really want to watch a good video, Tim Limeweber from the Water Department put one out there, that if you go to our website and you choose government and then choose water, right at the top of that page is a blue banner that will say how to check your service line. And it's really worth watching. It is one of the ones that are really, really well done, and I know that a number of communities have asked about that video and how it was made. But it is a mandate. We have to do it. So I know that we have about 50% of the folks have already responded, which is really wonderful. If you haven't responded and you want to check out that video, it'd be really great to do so. And if, it comes to the point where you didn't get around to it or you're not really sure, I know the Water Department will be coming house to house to make sure what you have in there, because it is it's a mandate that says we have to get it done. And we jumped on it from the beginning. I think that's a great move. And like I said, we're at least at 50%. So if you got 6,000 homes, we got about 3,000 more to go. Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see if the word has gotten around how many other communities might be looking at your website and saying, hey, here's a good one. If, say, a resident in, I don't know, Stillwater, Oklahoma, you want to know how to figure out where your pipes are at, you look at the Beatrice website.
Yeah, well, I would imagine that's happening, yes.
One of the things that Steve mentioned in his update, Steve Kelly, the water superintendent on that, is that of the reports he got where people thought they had a lead line, an actual check of there didn't show that. If you continue that same trend, you may not have a whole lot of service line replacements needed if that kind of extrapolates to the rest of the properties you have to check.
Yeah, because I think they went out and double checked to make sure, and so far they haven't found anybody who's reported lead that has a lead issue. I think the other quote that he said is, if your home, and we still need to check, so don't quit to check if you have a newer home. But I think he said most of the homes that they have worried about were built prior to the 1930s or in the 1930s or older. So when you look at that, if they haven't been remodeled or something going on, you might have a few. But I would say we're not going to have a lot of lead pipe issue.
Yeah. Now, the city's part of it, from the service connection to the street, any idea on, I would imagine few, if any, of those are in the trouble category, are they? Or
I really don't know. I know Steve will have a good idea.
Yeah.
I mean, off the top of my head, from what he said, I don't think we're going to have a lot of issues.
I see. Okay. All right. One of the things we talked about a little bit last week was the vacancy in the community development department with Rob Merrow going into a private business position here at the end of the year. Any kind of update on how that's going? What direction you'll kind of head on that for choosing that person?
Sure. I think, first of all, we have a couple of people internally that are interested in that position. So we're going to go through the interview process for the internal candidates in, I believe, maybe even as early as Monday. If one of those are chosen, then, of course, we put them in that position in January. If it looks like neither one of those have been qualified for the job or for some reason they don't fit, then we would do an external advertising process.
If in the end you did pick one of the internal candidates, do you plan to, is the plan to kind of stick with still a 3-person office or get someone else in there to fill the other position that would be vacated?
Right. Our plan is still to have a 3-person office and still keep it a community development position. I think Rob Merrow did a great job of building that office. And, in any city of 12,500 or 13,000 people, you have a lot of things to check, a lot of issues, and a lot of complaints that you need to deal with. So, I think Rob was a perfect fit for that job, and I know he's moving on. I think we're looking for someone as well that will be a perfect fit for that position because it takes one that, is customer service oriented, but they also have to enforce. And so that takes a special person to make sure that they're really treating the person that they have to say, you got to do this with respect.
Yeah, you have to kind of have good, I guess it's diplomatic skills too.
Yes, you do.
In a position like that. So.
Yep, you have to be diplomatic, but yet you also have to make sure that you enforce the ordinances that we have.
Okay. Back to wrap up Ask the Mayor with Mayor Bob Morgan in just a moment. 6 minutes left on our program today with Bob Morgan, Mayor of Beatrice, on Ask the Mayor. One other thing that we mentioned in your first program last week, that the meeting you have planning to have coming up in January, I think it's on the 23rd, kind of a work session, goal-setting session for the city council to kind of look over short-term things that are already in the mail, maybe intermediate, and then those things that, hey, people would like to see, but you don't quite know if you have the resources to do. Have you gotten any early feedback prior to the meeting even being set, or in just informal discussions on things?
I haven't had a lot of items come up yet. I will tell you that we'll hand out a sheet that basically asks them to put anywhere up from 1 to 11 goals on it, and they'll have the opportunity to check a box. Like I said last time, is it is it in the next 7 months goal? Is it a 2 to 3 year goal? Is it a 4 to 7 year goal? Or like I said before, the pie in the sky, which you never know what that is. It might be the best thing that could really help boost population in Beatrice. So again, the process, I think, will be really exciting. I know the form is done. We'll hand it out. I feel a little bit like going back to when I was an educator, and giving out an assignment. And I'm hoping they really do a good job, because I think on Monday night we're also going to pass out a sheet of a number of projects that have been done in the city of Beatrice because we set goals.
Yeah.
And I think that will show them how this is going to be exciting as well. And again, it's going to be anonymous, so we'll look for commonalities, and we'll look for the ones that are just sitting out there, and we'll look for something that is like, never thought of that.
Yeah. Next year, do you move into a new budget biennium?
We do.
That's right.
So, from January through September 30th, there's not going to be a lot of monetarily things we can do. And then we hope there's goals that we can kind of filter out. How do we fit those in the next biennium, or is it the next one after that? So it is partial tied into the budget process, which is really, really good. That's kind of how you really should do that, is tie goals into your budgetary cycle.
And you do have those projects that are already in the works. I think to the water loan that you got from the state of Nebraska for more than $7 million, that's going to fund a lot of those projects that people maybe don't see because they're out of sight, out of mind, but they're probably some of the most important things.
They are. They all deal with infrastructure. I'd like to say they're all out of sight, out of mind, but once you start digging up water lines that are from the 1800s and have to replace them, there will be a little bit of construction challenges as we do that. But, it's one of those things that we look ahead and try to plan ahead so we don't have major issues with water breaks and line breaking.
Yeah. I was trying to remember, were you around when the big break took place at 4th and Grant many years ago? I don't know if you were or not. Boy, that was one really prime example of what can happen if, something really, really old just goes wrong in the middle of nowhere, but that created quite a problem.
That might have been the first year or two I was here, because I remember having to boil water.
Yeah. That was a big malfunction there. That was one of the things you don't like to see. Anyway. Coming up in the not too distant future, I know with Stan we had mentioned it just briefly at times, but have a new legislative session coming up. I think it's going to be the 90-day session this time around. There wasn't a lot of impact on municipalities, if I remember right, from last year's session, but I know cities track what's kind of going on. How do you plan to, what's the system kind of locally, how you guys kind of take a look at what's going on legislatively?
Our city administrators do a wonderful job of bringing to us bills that may affect municipalities and the city of Beatrice, and they will continue to do the same. And we'll take a look at if there's any bills we need to take a position on. We certainly will. But I think right now we'll probably keep the same place and process, and Tobias does a good job of keeping us informed of what's happening in the legislature.
Is it all that often that somebody from the city actually testifies, say, before a committee, or do you leave that maybe up to the League of Municipalities or people like that? I know there's a lobbying group that cities rely on.
Right. I think most of that testifies through the lobbying. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Tobias has gone up and testified before. So it really depends on what the issue is and how much it impacts us.
Yeah. Okay. Monday night, you have a council meeting coming up. What are some of the big issues on the agenda? I think you mentioned the appointment or the swearing in of Dave Eskra to the city council, but
right. He was unable to make the first meeting, so he will be sworn in. We talked about the appointments. We talked a little bit about the on-call services and the lift station. Probably going to be somewhat of a light agenda. It's December 19th. We're wrapping up this particular year, and we're kind of focusing on the holiday season. So we have our agenda setting meeting today, so I'll know if it's any more. But what I'd like to really tell people is that if you go to our Beatrice City website, which really is a great website, if you haven't been there, there's a lot of information there. We try to build transparency in there. And I think Friday afternoon, the full agenda will be posted there. And then you find it, you go to the main web page, the home page, you go to government, and then off on the right-hand side, you'll see agendas and meetings, or minutes, I believe. You click on that, and it'll take you to the agenda for Monday night. So that way, that website is really a great place to go for any resource. As you know, it's built out very well with the subtitles, easy to navigate, easy to find. So anytime you say, oh, gee, I wonder what the city council is going to work on tonight, just click on there, and you'll be able to see that.
And it's not just the City Council or Board of Public Works, it's other commissions, too, and other boards that are advisory to you as a council and mayor, so you can find out if there's an item on there that you want to get kind of a sneak preview of what might be coming before the council. That's on there, too. So.
Absolutely. If you click on boards and boards and committees, I think there's like 12 or 13 that are out there. And their agendas are there, like Board of Public Works, where the next meeting is Wednesday the 28th or 9th, whichever that is. Their agenda will be out there.
Any work session this month? I don't think there is there? Or?
There is not.
Okay.
We've already decided with it falling between Christmas and New Year's, it's not the best time. Also going to ask for some time of them in January as we look at that goal-setting period. So it really fit in nicely not to have a work session.
All right. Bob, thanks very much for coming in again.
Thank you.